about coming up Main Street. Our recommendation was that we come up Main Street.
And when was that?
I would guess that was prior to 2011, maybe during 2011, that was our preferred route. Now,
Okay,
traditionally,
just so we're all on the same page. This is from 2010. This was actually Randy Petrillo had sent this out. This was the meeting you had, and it says that the board, Paul Rotundi, was outraged with negotiations with MWR raised. And he said it led to broken promises. So that happened in 2010. If you went to the minutes of that meeting, it had some stuff in the water tank. But the route, this is talking about the route through Broadway and up there. So which my understanding was always you wanted to go on Main Street. We're told to get off Main Street, and then you came up with this route here. The first email that I can find that you talking to the Board of Selectmen is on May 18th of 2010, and the route that you have is the route that's up through Broadway, which you're claiming is the second route. But I found no emails suggesting that Main Street was an actual route.
Let me back up a little bit. We have done heavy construction in many tight urban areas, whether it be Medford Square, whether it be Arlington Center, whether it be Dorchester Lower Mills, East Milton Square. I could go on and on and on with all the different locations that we've done pipelines like this. And traditionally the way it's worked, the way it's always worked, is we go and scope out from the town officials, whether it be the mayor, whether it be the town manager, whoever may be designated as the point person with them, what is acceptable to them as a route. We convey to them which route we think is our preference as engineers and construction folks, and then we kind of take their temperature, if you will, as to what's acceptable to the town. And in this case, we were dealing with the town administrator, and we indicated to him that we were interested in going up Main Street.
Prior to 2010, you had suggested it to the...
That's my recollection. That
prior to 2010, you had suggested to Dave Ragucci that we go down Main Street, and somewhere at Friendly's or in your coffee shops or somewhere like that, Dave said, bad idea, not going to do it.
No, Dave said, I'll have to get back to you.
Okay.
He then got back to us and said, no, this is not going to fly.
Yeah. Well, it's not in any minutes from any meeting.
That's right.
Prior to 2010. I don't know where that is.
That's right.
But this, all right, so to be clear this up, prior to 2010, Dave and some other people, might have been the chamber, might have been board members, might have been a subcommittee, have discussed Main Street, and Main Street was off the table, correct?
Yeah, Main Street was off. He got back to us and said Main Street was not acceptable
prior to 2010.
To the town. And
prior to 2010.
Well, it really hit, as I said, it really hit the fan in 2011 when the selectmen voted.
And I have everything for 2011. I have all the minutes and stuff. And I mean, this is the only meeting that I can see that that you came to until probably 2014.
I was here October 8th of 2013, November 18th, 2013.
So from 2010 to 2013, you were here.
Then May 2015. That's what I have as records for me coming here. So when that letter came, we went in a different direction, starting in basically early 2012.
So
to
when
go
you
up the east side.
The east side. Okay. Well, this. So just so you know.
I'm sorry.
In May of 2018. Excuse me, Ellen. There's a meeting going. You'll have your chance to speak afterwards. Okay. This here is a meeting in 2010. It's on May 18th, 2010. If you look at the route that you're going to take, it says that.
We looked at many options. So just so
2010.
you know,
This is what you told the board you were going to go. Okay. It said you were going to do it, and this was the route that goes up Broadway and through the soccer fields. This is where John jumped onto, and it's right here.
Right.
Summer to Bow to Green to Broadway to 28. You're going to go by the senior center through the soccer field, and then John got wind we're going to do soccer field, and that's how this kind of evolved. That's the route that you keep telling us was picked after Main Street said no. So,
that's right.
Okay, so
that's right.
So in 2010, you had this route. So prior to 2010, the discussions happened to get you off of Main Street.
Well, 2010, 2011, it
This meeting
continued.
happened in 2010. The route that you have here is the first route that you'll call it your second route, the route after.
A second alternative, yeah.
Second alternative. After Main Street was shut down, you went to this route here.
Yeah, to go up, for those listening, up the east side of
All right, so going up the east
Route
side in
28.
2010. Are we clear on that?
What?
On May
It really-
18th of
we didn't spend
2010, you came to the Board of Selectmen and said that we are going to go, and you also talked about the soccer field and everything like that we're going to go, where the hell did I just put that?
It's right there.
Yeah, right here.
Summer Street, Bowl, Green, Elm, that's what
Okay.
you're looking for.
So as of May, you would agree that in May of 2010, you were into your second alternative?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's all I'm asking.
or perhaps sometime into 11, but the discussions continue.
Okay,
But we-
I'm saying, I mean, we're not going to, it's going to be a long night, Fred.
That's fine.
There's a meeting
I'm
here,
here-
notes
I'm
on
here
May
till the cows come
2010, where you're going to your second route. Are you not going to admit to that?
No, that's probably right.
That's probably right. Okay, it is right. It is right. So in 2010, we were into the second route, which is the
Right?
yeah. Okay. Right.
Right, we haven't finalized, so we're looking at different,
Right,
frankly,
we're-
we're looking at different options. We're looking at, we're going to cut through the golf course. Where were we going to come back down onto Route 28? There was a bunch of different options about the way. But as we started to look at that option, we found that some incredible percentage of the route had ledge within 2 feet of the surface. The streets were narrow, and we spent a lot of money, frankly, doing borings and scouting out a route that would be, as you look at it, to the east of Route 28.
Okay, so you guys, because that was my next question, really, but thanks for answering it. So you guys did the test borings, and you picked the route, because from what I understand, Caroline, myself, and Anne Marie went around in the middle of the night with utility maps, doing our own test borings, and suggesting the route to you guys, and then you guys accepted it, because that's the word on the street. So you guys actually picked Oak Street, right?
I don't understand.
I don't understand what you're saying.
People keep saying the MWRA has told them that the selectmen said they can't go down Main Street, and that this is the route to take down Oak. Is that a true statement? And you guys just took Oak just because we said so?
As I said, and I'll say it again, we were designated to talk to the town administrator. That's who we dealt with.
Oh, okay, so you dealt with the town administrator.
He conveyed to us what was acceptable to the town and what wasn't.
Ms. Lasky, and thank you for coming, all of you. Clearly, you were all at the last meeting. Clearly, there was a remark from the audience that said the Board of Selectmen picked the route. I think you all remember that. I was the one speaking. So I can tell you, I clearly remember it. That statement was also reaffirmed that evening. What we're trying to do here this evening is something that rarely happens in politics, to get to the truth, which is why there's the documentation, the dates, we're following the timelines. Because, Mr. Lasky, what was said at the meeting was not accurate. I took personal offense to it because I am a member of the board, and I would never support this coming in a residential neighborhood. Neither would Mr. Busey, neither would anyone with any level of common sense that is responsible for what happens in the town. That's why you're here this evening, to get to the truth, because no one spoke up the other night and said what you just said a moment ago, except me, because Mr. Busey wasn't there, that you did speak to the prior town administrator, not the current town administrator, and that you were directed not to go on a certain route. That's what we're here to find out this evening. So I appreciate the fact that you're answering questions. I appreciate the fact that the horse was out of the barn for the other night. But tonight, we're going to set the record straight, get to the truth, find out who was responsible for this, because I have residents all over that part of town that want to know the truth as to what happened and who was responsible. And I'm not going to take that blame because I wasn't involved with it, and neither is Mr. Busey. That's why you're here this evening. Okay? Is everyone clear on that?
Yep.
Okay.
So, do you want me to continue with the...
Well, just so, in case anyone's curious, this is the original route that you selected, all right? Well, the second route, I guess, that goes, the date on this. This goes up with a cemetery. Yeah, this is Summer to Bow to.
Yeah, that was one, that was.
That was the route you were working on. Now, that route,
Yeah.
your second route, the one that came after the Main Street route, this is an email that came out on 2011. So in 2011, town officials are dealing with the westerly route. Am I right in saying that, the westerly? I'm sorry, that's actually east. The one, easterly route. Yeah.
That's the one that was the.
That was one. So 2011, we're working on that route there. And
Like
to
I
be
said, I
honest,
think about 2/3 of that route had ledge, right?
quite
within-
possible. All right.
It did.
It did.
It's not possible, it did.
And then, it was in 2011 that current board, I think, sent this letter off to you. And it was frustration, I think, because there was very little communication. This is all that happened in 2011. These are the only communications. Most of them were coffee with Dave. They requested the information for the pipeline.
But I just want
Trying to set up some meetings with you and whatnot. I mean, okay. So, 2012 comes by, and there's two correspondents. This one here is, it's discussing the route, what's being proposed, where it's going, and there's a Boston picture around all this stuff. That's really all that happened. Then a fact sheet came out again, which is pretty much the same thing, same route, preferred route. So in 2012, we're still on that route, right? The easterly route.
Yep.
Then 2013, basically what happened was we're asking around this time, what route are we taking? Can we get some information on the route? And we're trying to schedule a meeting with you. And I guess we sent you a meeting request. I was actually on the board at this time, and you agreed to go to a meeting on October 8th. This is the only, I was chairman for 2 years. This is the only correspondence I found in all of these chains that I was on. And I just thanking John for putting the pressure on you, really, to force you to come to a meeting that week.
No one ever forced me to come to a meeting. I have come willingly as I sit here today.
Well, I mean, I'm going through them. Oftentimes, you fail to make it.
No, that's not true. There was one time I was invited to a meeting, and I called Mr. Iguchi and told him that my daughter was graduating from college and that I needed to attend an award ceremony, and I could not make it. He then let me know that he had passed that on to the chairman of the board and that they went ahead with it anyway. So I was under the impression it was going to be put off to another meeting, and it wasn't.
There were several meetings that were put off.
If I was invited, I was here, or I called in and had an explanation for why I couldn't be there. And if I had been told it was going to stay on the agenda, I would have sent some people.
Just trying to find the minutes. Executive session. This is.
One of the things, Mr. Bussi, is to keep in mind there was communication back and forth on a regular basis with the town administrator that weren't in emails and weren't on board agenda.
Well, apparently, and I think that's the crutch of this here. So to sit here and say, well, the board did this, and all these conversations are happening over a cup of coffee or something, and then throwing the board under the bus, I don't think it's appropriate. I mean, I really find that disingenuous. I mean, I don't know that you treat all the towns you go to like that, where you just try to blame former boards and particular members of the board for things that go wrong as you run your pipes all through their town. I mean,
Well,
I
you've done a very exhaustive search on things that I've written and said. I'd ask you to provide some evidence that I blame the Board of Selectmen. Where is that? What forum was that? Where is that in writing? Where is there some record of me blaming the Board of
I got
Selectmen?
an email here that- I got an email that I've sent you from the chairman of the Board of Selectmen that says that you, Fred Lansky, told him that I told you you couldn't get down Main Street. I've called you, I've emailed you, and I've asked you to set the record straight.
And I am setting the record straight. I
and
don't
you
have
told
any
me you don't want to get
recollection of that.
involved. Even though you're the executive for the MWRA, you don't want to get involved. Sorry, Carolyn.
At the meeting at the Robin Hood School,
Yes.
I clearly articulated that the former town administrator was engaged in conversations with you because I was made aware of that from him.
Yep.
That's the only reason I said that. A comment came from the audience that it was the Board of Selectmen. I'm sorry, Mr. Lasky, silence is consent. You had an obligation to set the record straight as you're doing this evening, and I commend you. I want you to know I thank you and I commend you for doing what you're doing. But the horse is out of the barn. The time to speak the truth was in the public meeting when the resident clearly accused the Board of Selectmen. That was the time to be a stand-up person and say, no, I was dealing with the prior town administrator, which was my opening statement when I took the podium that night, because I was told that from the prior town administrator. That was the right thing to do. Okay, politics is a funny game, but there's always an opportunity to tell the truth. In everything that we do, that's why we're here in a public meeting tonight, on the record, on TV, taking public comments, speaking to you. That was the time to speak up and defend
For me
the
to what?
truth.
For me to speculate
In the
as to
meeting,
why
in the
the...
meeting, when I said it was the prior town administrator, that was a factual statement, because you've reaffirmed that this evening, that was a factual statement, and I appreciate that. I'm here to tell you that I appreciate that. But the time to do it was back at the Robin Hood School, because there was a bunch of people there that now need to be educated on the truth, because they were told something, because no one spoke up, they believed it. It was not true, and that's why we're here tonight, to set the record straight.
Additionally, I contacted the town administrator and asked him to get in touch with you and said that, this has gotten off the charts between other false accusations going on in social media, most of them from elected members in town, and he called you and asked you to set the record straight.
Who called me?
Mr. Younger.
We spoke, but I was not speaking with him to set the record straight for him to appear at a
Right.
meeting of the infrastructure subcommittee.
No, when I talked to you and Bob Galvin, you were going to call
Oh, we had conversations on Thursday.
to try to get him to, I requested several times, simple letter. The Board of Selectmen didn't pick this route. And you couldn't even do that. I mean, anyone that thinks that we picked a route, you guys said, yeah, great, we'll just put it there without doing any tests. I mean, it's kind of a crazy thought, but it would be nice if you would kind of have a little backbone and say, no.
Well, you know what, Mr. Busey, maybe you should talk to the former town administrator yourself, okay? Why don't you give him a call and find out what his version of matters? I have no knowledge about what conversations went on between the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen. I know that he said he had to go back and see if this had any
I've gone
legs.
through all the minutes, and
If
we can
I'm just
spend all
telling you,
night on this. And I
Of
can
course
go
we
through all the
could.
minutes and-
Of course we could.
you know.
Maybe the solution is you call Mr. Iguchi and ask
Well,
him.
that's why I have
His
you here.
recollection of the matter.
That's probably
I have you here. That's, I
Okay?
mean,
Well, I'm
so
trying to be
all I
a
need from
gentleman
you-
here,
I have
okay?
two things I need from you, Fred.
But-
And I think you've done one. You've admitted that whenever this Main Street thing happened was prior to 2010, and that it was between Rigucci and yourself. And secondly, did you guys pick the route or did we?
We came in, well, let me finish the timeline, if you will.
I have it here, so keep it
I will. So now,
consistent.
now the route up the east side is not acceptable. We come back to the town, say, look, we're going to look up the west side. We came here in 2000, my recollection is I came here in 2014 before the board and said we're going to look at going up the west side of the route. And I did mention at that time, again, before the board, that the MWRA's preference, I said it kind of lightheartedly because Dave was staring me down, that I'd like to go up Main Street. But there was obviously no support for that, so we went up the west side. And here we sit today in a very difficult project in a neighborhood that's inconveniencing a lot of people, and we apologize
So the
for that.
MWRA and their engineers tried to go up the west side. At some prior to 2010,
Right.
they wanted to go up Main Street, and we're told no. And and I'll be honest with you, you could not do that project in the middle of Main Street. You would have shut down every one of those businesses, and all these side streets that have the construction projects. We get speeding complaints on them right now. But that said, you tried to go to West Street, the east side, hit too much ledge, and then the only route that you could get there from was the route that your guys engineered and selected. Correct?
Yes, and making sure that the town, through the town administrator and Mr. Golver, knew what we were looking at.
Okay, so your engineers selected a route. Once they tried another route, hit too much ledge. Then you came up with this route. Your guys did. Your decision brought it to the town. I mean, if I got to pick the
But
route,
hang on, we couldn't force the town. We need the town's consent to do it.
no, you didn't, because we would have said no. We've tried to get rid of Eversource as well. If I picked the route, Fred, it'd be in Woburn right now. Okay. So,
Can I say something? Mr. Lasky and other members, you know, I understand that you have a job to do. I really do. But we've been saying now, since the entire time that I've been on the board, there's multiple projects coming down the pike. We're aware of every project, which is why we push back. Quite frankly, to have this project come in the neighborhood that it's in right now is a breach of our duty of care. We would be irresponsible, the board, for saying that. Now, the following day, we got a commitment at that meeting that there would be no construction during school hours. I got a call from a resident the next morning. I apologize.
7:30 to 8:30.
I apologize, the next morning,
7:30 to
okay?
8:30.
I got a call from a resident that said a crane came within a few feet, swinging around, okay, to a parent and a child walking to school. I mean, that is the seriousness of the construction and the neighborhood there. I can't imagine that you guys would want some kind of a lawsuit on your hands because people are right in the path of your construction. It's completely irresponsible. Now, as I said, okay, you're there now, you're working, but the object is to mitigate and reduce those instances over there in that neighborhood, and that is really concerning to me because I continue to get calls that construction's going on during times where parents are walking with children on a regular basis. And that big crane, they described the size of that crane to me, swinging back and forth. That's a pretty dangerous thing. We're waiting for a construction coordinator. We've been promised. I said it that night, and I'm not ashamed to say it again. Our state rep and our state senator promised us in May a construction coordinator. What's the status of that? Is that happening or is that not happening? Has anyone from our legislative delegation reached out to you to tell you you're getting a construction coordinator?
Well,
Mr. Lasky, I directed my question to you, not the audience.
Well, let me just say this. We have a full-time coordinator who's there all the time. Mr. Sheehan is there part-time. He's back in the office part-time.
They're on your project, not
Yes.
the coordination of all the
There are
projects that we have going on.
regular coordination meetings. We meet with the town officials. Mr.
Okay,
Glover, the police
for
chief-
you have an MWRA person there. Have you been notified from anyone at the state level that someone's going to be coordinating your project along with others in Stoneham?
There was a meeting that I was invited to, when was that meeting? June 23rd. And in the lower level of this building, where Representative Day was there, and a representative from Senator Lewis's office was there, in which the ground rules were laid out for regular coordination meetings with the public safety folks, with the utility.
Let me ask a third time the question.
And-
Is there anyone that you've been afforded to assist with your project and other projects in Stoneham from the state to coordinate multiple? I don't mean your man here. You're doing it best you can. I hear from the neighbors. I appreciate that. But is there anyone here that you're aware of that's coordinating multiple projects, including yours?
Why don't you stick to the subject?
The town,
yeah, the subject is the MWRA.
the town,
okay, and we're
the
sticking
town
to it.
officials, the police are there.
Mr. Lasky, it's a simple question. Simple
answering
question.
it.
No, has there been a resource from the state provided to you to assist with your project, not an MWRA employee, someone to coordinate the projects, yours and others? Has anyone been provided to you from the state?
No, I believe that there are representatives from the rep's office and the senator's office who attend the meetings.
Are they a person on site? Okay, I'm not a person on site. Okay,
She's
on
speaking.
site. We were told in a May meeting when you guys weren't around the embryo stages of this in May. We were told we were getting a construction coordinator. We were concerned about safety, as we are. You're here because primarily safety and to get to the truth. So the answer, I think, is no.
But I don't know
Right?
what role they play. I mean, the
I'm
town...
not asking you about the role,
town-
I'm asking you, have you been given information, have you been provided anyone from the state to coordinate these projects? Okay, thank you.
No,
for answering
but
my
I will,
question.
can I
Sure.
qualify that answer? There is a representative of Mass DOT who attends the meetings. There are Eversource has people at the meeting. We're at the
Yeah.
meeting. There are any number of local officials.
Bike path.
What?
The bike path.
The
Yeah,
bike
that's-
path people.
that-
are
that-
they-
that's fine.
And one more second, if I could. We have 2 police details at every piece of equipment. There's one on either side of those pieces of equipment, and they, talking with the chief and talking with the safety officer, Ponzo, they have all been briefed on when the kids are coming and kids are going from school, what they're to do. If there's any kids coming, to shut it down and make sure the kids are far enough away. And I'm told they're doing a very good job. They also put some additional
Those
traffic
are Stone and
enforcement.
police officers, right?
Stoneham Police,
Yeah.
as long as they can film with Stoneham.
Yeah.
Sometimes apparently there are
It
other...
doesn't, I just want to clear who is putting.
I know when the project started, we were getting detoured into detours, and that was a real problem. And, then people were using the redstone to try to cut through, so we're looking for someone, a dedicated person that understands which roads are being closed this week, next week, the project over here is going on.
I
We
believe
can't close that up.
I believe that your police department, I know your police department runs the traffic management plan. And so they're the ones who are calling the shots on the detours. We tell them what we're doing, where we're going to be, how long we're going to be there, what's involved. They do the traffic plan, then they tell us how many detail officers. And right now, I think we have 10 on site during the construction, which is frankly more than I ever can remember on any other project.
They've done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
filling all those.
And they do, so, and we're in discussions with
Is there
them.
a person at the top that understands which roads are being closed, where that detour, where that traffic is being routed to, and that not too much traffic from another detour is being routed to the same place? Is there a
This
point
is
person?
discussed every second Tuesday with the town. If there's some hiccups, sometimes then the engineering department will bring them to our attention and we'll address them right away.
Yeah, this question's for Mr. Younger, then. So you attend these meetings, I take it?
I've attended some of them. We do have a representative from my office attended the last one, I believe, was a day or two ago, and a representative from my office was there.
So what we're going to need is a report from that meeting. We're going to need an update to the board, and it's probably going to have to online.
David took notes.
Miss-
I went to 2 of them. Notes are being taken and given and forwarded and put in the paper.
I mean,
You know what I mean? So this is being done.
it should be minutes from the meeting. Should be
Minutes from the meeting.
Minutes from the meeting.
Yeah.
This street will be closed, this street's closed, we found a problem
Don't
over here.
forget, these guys work for the state.
Yeah, they're doing the project.
Right. They work for the state, and they're the construction managers there.
Right,
They work for the state, on the job, all day long.
that's great.
Right? There's your answer.
Great. Then you guys can help with the minutes, I take it. So
Yeah, we can provide, or whoever wants to, we can talk to the town on who's going to do it, whether you want to have the...
It's gotta be communicated
Secretary of
back
the
in.
board. I believe the secretary of the board comes to the meetings now, right?
I asked you to go.
You asked her to go, so she...
well, again, that wasn't his decision to ask her, and she's got a job to do here.
That was.
Whatever.
Absolutely.
You don't have the authority to do that, George.
I want the public to know what's going on.
But you don't have
Go
the
this
authority
meeting
to-
And educate the.
George, you don't have the authority to do that without the board voting.
But
Are
you
you kidding
have
me?
the authority to
So-
tell Tom Younger to do whatever you
Tom
ask him
Younger
to
works
do.
for me, yes. I can tell Tom Younger that the subcommittee has
Wow.
suggested...
And Dave
that-
also works for you.
David works for us too.
Yeah, but you don't have the authority to take her out of her position. It's not even in her job description, George, but we can talk about this another time.
Have Tom Chickatelli look up some more emails about the board and all that. either.
What's that?
Why don't you have Tom, did you ask Tom Chickatelli to look up for all the emails?
Yeah, the public records.
Where's the Tom website? Shouldn't that be more important? Were you just gonna jump to your, just you, what you need?
The public records.
Maybe
Fall into this trap.
This is embarrassing.
You're,
Yeah.
all right, it's going back to you, Fred. All right, so we have these. Now, next up, I want to start talking about the equipment, okay? So according to you, when we were discussing the high school and where we were going to lay this stuff down, you basically said,
This meeting is a shame. You guys should be ashamed of yourself. You guys know.
Mr.
You
Chairman,
are
we don't-
instructing,
Hey,
you instruct the
Hey,
town
5-minute recess,
administrator.
yeah, 5-minute
You
recess.
instruct the town administrator to make decisions, and you guys
5-minute
are
recess.
sitting here making yourselves look like fools. Sick of it. Be ashamed of yourself. And I'm sorry, MWA, you guys are doing a great job.
If we don't give you a lay-down area, the contractor's going to have to find his own lay-down area, and that private person will take the money that would have come
Oh,
to the town.
it was a different dynamic. The town was looking for
Right.
financial payment for the construction, and the concept was we couldn't just give you, the town, a check. So the idea was, could the town provide us something of value that would help the construction, that we could then rationalize a payment to the town?
Right.
And so the idea was, it started off with, I think, Landers Lane, or whatever that
So
street
there's
is.
a million of them there, yes.
Where there's like a dump or whatever it is.
Went over to Stevens Street.
Stevens Street.
Yeah, there was a warrant
So the
article.
idea was that, for initial proposal was that we would pay to level it, we could use it as a laydown area, and then when we were done, we would seed it, and everyone would be happy. And there was a substantial cost to that. However, under the hazardous waste laws of the Commonwealth, if you start digging it, you own the whole thing. So it could have gone into the millions for us to agree, because there was a piece of asphalt and whatever. So we got to the point where it just was too risky for both the town and for us to start digging there, even though, so then it went around and around. They looked at the recycling location, but they also, then the town came up with the idea that there was a field that was seldom used beside the high school. I was asked to come out. It was a rainy, drizzly night, or morning rather, and Dave, Mr. Rigucci, and I believe it was the superintendent, maybe it was the headmaster, I'm not sure, whoever was in charge of the schools at that point. We walked around, we talked about, could we, have times during the day when the trucks wouldn't come in and out, because the parents and the kids would be coming in and out, and we got down to that level of detail, and then that didn't have any legs. The town didn't approve that. And then, as we move forward, I believe, I'm losing track of the various players here, but I think it was Mr. Younger liked the idea of a new meter north of the town.
That happened way back. That was through Bob Grover, and that happened in probably 11 or 12. I'm not
No,
sure
that's
when
not
that
true.
was.
That's absolutely not true. That's not true. So, anyway, so for a rough value of $450,000 to the town, we agreed that we would put that meter in.
Mr. Chairman? Just clarification on the laydown site. One of the issues, and it had to go to town meeting, is because our bylaws only allow for a one-year term for a lease, and I believe you're looking for the laydown area for up to 3 years. So we could not enter into an agreement of 1 year, 1 year, and 1
Right.
year. And
So that's my question is this, though. According to Fred in this email, it says further, if the option is private rental, we would most likely simply leave that to the contractor to find a laydown area, which is most common practice. Right?
Right.
So, town's not going to get any money. Contractor's going to find a laydown area. Why is he using our land for the lay? Why is he using our land? Isn't he responsible for a laydown area?
What land?
It's all over our streets. Okay.
I mean, that's
So-
a double, I mean, that's a, a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, having it in the street is inconvenient. There's no way around that. On the other hand, if you have to bring all the equipment in, during rush hour, a mile, 2 miles away, you're losing a half an hour to an hour of work that they could be putting in an extra
They
piece of pipe.
they can start trucking earlier
Yeah.
than that. So this is Oak Street. Right, this is
Yeah.
still Oak. That's all the
This is a
piping.
very common practice. I mean, virtually every pipe laying company, that's what they do. They lay the pipe out as they go through, whether it be big pipe, little pipe. The gas company does it.
So these are our
It's not-
sidewalks on a safe route to school.
Well, I don't see a sidewalk there.
Well, that's in Stoneham, that's what a sidewalk looks like. This is Northgate. This isn't part of the construction, which really begs the question, who's paving this stuff when it's done?
We're going to do an inspection of that, of Northgate, and see what it looks like.
This is North Street
One of the
over here.
residents the other night was asking us about that.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I was down Northgate this evening. I don't know if it's temporary or not, but the trucks have moved further back. They're no longer at the corner, at least as of tonight.
Ms. Oskey, I have a question. Other than our common roads and streets, what other laydown area are you using, whether that's town or state, or what other laydown area are you using right now?
Well, Representative Day was able to get us the cloverleaf up on Route 128, 95 and 128. We're still, we've got a laydown area in the back of the MDC, or the DCR lot down by the pond. We still have some stuff in Reading, but that's, and also in Wakefield, that comes over.
Where specifically in Wakefield and Reading?
Wakefield's on the town line past Bear Hill. There's a little-
You know, down Hopkins Street, there's that little triangle
Yeah.
there, right there.
Okay.
And then in Reading, if you go, also take a left on the other side of Hopkins, there's a triangle there. But
Okay.
we're going to be getting out of both of those pretty quick.
Moving out of it.
Okay, is there any way,
Especially if there's someone from Wakefield watching this.
is there any way, is there a plan in place to move the vehicle? I had a party on Oak Street this weekend, and it was a nightmare, trying to get there. Is there any way that you could move, when those spaces vacate, is there any way that you could move some of the construction vehicles that are on the street over to those alternative laydown areas so that the streets aren't, I mean, is that part of the plan?
If there is a special arrangement, someone has a party or something, we will clearly clear out. We did it for a wedding.
Yeah, my question is more broad, Mr. Lasky.
Right, but I'm not sure we have the wrong.
Is there any way, well, if you're going to be losing some of those other sites, I mean, Stoneham's bearing the brunt of this, and
Right.
there's no benefit for us, with all due respect. If you are moving, vacating vehicles from those other sites, is there any way that you can shift some of the laydown that's on our town streets over to those other sites to just mitigate some of the disruption
Yes,
in our
It's
neighborhoods?
a moving target, by the way. I mean, it's like, it just moves along Oak Street. It's not going to be in the same place all the time. That's what you
Right.
do
My
with-
concern isn't where it is, it's the fact that it's on our residential roads and
It's supposed
streets.
to be off
So,
Oak Street,
it's, if you try to get a fire truck with cars coming both way this weekend, if you need an emergency services on Oak Street, you were in trouble this weekend, because I was down there. I had a party there. It was hardly anyone showed up just because of the hassle getting there. So that's my point, is there any way to shift some of these trucks from our public roads and streets over to some of those spots that you just admitted are going to be vacated soon?
Well,
Yeah, but they're
I
not.
went to 44 Oak Street, but the contractor did try to do that and put stuff in the residential area and tried to get the equipment off the road. And
Yeah.
that went to a town meeting as well.
Yeah, that's not my question. My question is,
Well, the problem,
I try to make it real clear again, third time.
Yeah, no.
You're vacating spaces in Reading and Wakefield that now are housing trucks that are working with this project.
Right.
Okay, you're leaving those, you're going to be moving trucks out of there. Is there any way to move some, not all, but some of the vehicles, look at that photo,
Right.
that are on residential street? Try to get a fire truck. Can you imagine trying to get a fire truck? But I'm just saying, but
If
whether
I have a
it's
heart
during
attack
your workday
during
or
the
not,
workday, I'm dead.
can you imagine? So,
but see, the problem is that the land, the Wakefield land and the Reading land was used to do the Wakefield part and the Reading part. Now that we're done up in Reading, they want us out. but people want it restored.
We want you out, too.
I know, we want to be out, I can assure you we want to be out.
Listen, don't even let me go there with the water bills, because it's a whole other day and a whole other meeting. But the point is that we want the vehicles, we want our streets safe, too. And we want our folks to be able to get emergency vehicles also. So, you know, as you move things along, as it sort of an incremental way, you can just get the trucks off of our streets, even if it's 4 or 5, 3 or 4 of them, and move them to those other sites where it's sporadic. They're being stored there sporadically, not what we have a constant burden on our neighborhoods.
Well, we can.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable
It's
request.
a reasonable request.
Yeah.
It absolutely
Yeah.
is. It is.
We need to lighten the load here, is what it is. These are islands in town. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Lasky, are the properties in Reading and Wakefield that you're utilizing, are they town-owned properties?
Yes.
I could have a conversation with both communities to see if they would be amenable.
You could try. I
The
mean,
gist of this is to provide them water. That's the purpose of this project.
it's to provide the whole northern intermediate high.
I'm going to ask a lot of questions about that too, because I don't understand something, but
Okay.
um,
I'll do that.
this is, so these streets are in tough.
Commissioner,
We're getting,
we will take a look at it. Are there things we can do on the weekend to lessen the burden?
Thank you.
yeah,
It's a good point.
okay, great. Now, we're finding this on the side streets. You know, it's from all these trucks are parking on all our side streets and they're getting destroyed. What guarantees do we have that these are going to be fixed when you guys leave? We have a real problem in town with utility companies coming in
Yeah.
and doing something, and then they disappear, and we don't see them again.
No, we'll leave it better than we found it. We will go inspect areas. If we damage things, we'll fix it and put it back. I mean, we can't agree to a curb to curb if there's one little spot where a piece of heavy equipment put a gouge in it like that. But anyway, we will inspect and we'll leave it better than we found it.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment.
Yeah.
With all due respect, I'm a trust but verified person. When that inspection takes place, and this happens all the time, not a reflection of you, utility companies come in, they work, they leave. You can't be the judge and jury. Someone from the town, has to weigh in on whether or not that street is left the way it was found. Because, you have a self-interest, obviously, and you're the MWRA. Our self-interest is the town. So rather than having you, I'd appreciate if you'd work with the town administrator of the Department of Public Works to have a joint inspection
Absolutely.
of every street, a review of every street that was worked on to ensure that when you leave, just like the Boy Scouts, you leave the campground.
Leave no
that
trace.
You found it, right?
Leave no
So
trace.
I'd appreciate that.
That would be
Just want
fine.
to note that we typically do pre-construction videos along our route too. So we try to capture side streets as well as the main street. So we have a lot of documentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so I need to understand this. I don't.
Yeah.
Okay? And I do know a little bit about construction, water flow, and stuff like that. Well, I understand that we have 2 pipes going down Main Street. They're very old?
No, we don't have pipes down Main Street.
Supply lines?
No.
Where do they
There's
go?
a very small section, like 1 block on Main Street, where we cross over, and then up north.
The original pipes?
Yes.
It comes up across, how can I say this? It basically ends up at the Coles, and there's another spoke that kind of goes across Elm Street to Wakefield line, so it kind of does this in the town.
Do you want us to give them a copy of the
Sure.
Yeah, let's see that.
Thank you.
The color map that's being presented, the blue lines are the existing lines. And, yeah, I think that's all right.
I got it.
And the other color lines ranging from pink to yellow to orange are part of this project. So if you look at, from the very bottom of that map, you'll see Spot Pond. If you start looking at the blue lines on the bottom, the blue dash lines, and then the solid blue lines coming up to Woburn and then running east, am I doing east to west? On, across to Elm Street, over to Wakefield, those are the existing lines, those blue.
Those blue.
And now if you go north in Woburn to Washington Street, that pink, yellow, pink, where it says Oak Street, and Reading, Summer Ave, Hawkins Ave, those are all have been constructed as part of this project, including coming down Main Street as it crosses into Stone. And now this contract that's underway is the purple, and the final one is the orange. So on Main Street, we do not have, except for that very small section, an existing pipe. And the purpose is to create a loop, a circle. That's what you see between the blue and the new colors, so that if there's a major break or leak anywhere in that circle, we can shut valves and continue to feed all these communities in both directions without a loss
So
of
that's my
service.
question. If there's, all right, so the original pipes are how old?
The original blue pipes?
Yeah.
They were constructed in over here, I think it was a 1975.
You came through Spot Pond.
All right, so
Yeah, and the problem is, down the bottom at Spot Pond, where it runs over this dashed blue line, that's called pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe. And historically, there has been a particular manufacturing area of pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe that when it fails catastrophically. And we know that that pipe was manufactured in that era and potentially at a casting location where some of this faulty pipe was done. So the purpose of the loop would allow us to even take that out of service and replace it, so that we'll continue to be able to serve all these communities at the same time without loss of pressure. If we were to lose that blue line, we lose pressure to Stoneham in water within a matter of hours and to all these other communities. So that's the goal of the project, and it had always been the goal of our project, was to provide redundancy. And we're doing this south of Boston, north of Boston. We're trying to provide redundancy so that if you have a major break anywhere, people will continue to get water to drink, fire protection, for flushing.
okay, so there are valves within this system somewhere.
We are constructing valves as part of the system.
In the existing
There's one
valves.
on, on North Street. I was up there a couple weeks ago. There's a valve being installed on North Street in this new work.
In the new work.
In the new work. And there's valves in some of the old pipe as well. So we'll be able to shut off and
That's
feed
right.
this
So
from
if this
both
pipe
sides.
blows out in the middle here someplace,
Yep.
there are valves that physically work, have been exercised. You
Yeah,
gotta
we
you can open-
exercise all
Yeah.
our
You
can
valves.
open
We
and shut
have
'em.
monthly,
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
yes, we exercise our valves.
So you can shut
We're at
that.
over 99% operability in all our valves.
Okay, that's good. Glad to hear that. Okay, I'm somewhat satisfied. And doesn't this also pick up several new towns, this connection?
In addition to providing that redundancy that provides all of this, we upgrade some of the pipe sizing to allow us to provide additional water to communities if they do come in. But the main goal was to provide that redundancy.
Didn't Reading tie in? Aren't they tied
Reading,
into this?
Wilmington has come in.
They're coming in off, this line's necessary for them to come in.
For that,
No.
well, they are currently served, but you have the same issue, lack of redundancy.
Yeah.
So if the pipe goes, they're in trouble, you're in trouble, Wilmington, Woburn, Wakefield are in trouble. So it's the whole system, which very quickly, the pressure would drop, you would draw a vacuum, which means you'd have air in your water pipes. You try to get your backups on, your emergency interconnections. We actually did a drill a couple of years ago with your DPW and water folks, simulating in all the other communities what would happen if that pipe went. And that's why there's a sense of urgency here to get this thing done.
Thank you. I can't speak for our town, Stoneham, but I was the administrator in Belmont during the Western break, and being called off a golf course late on a Saturday afternoon, back into town to plan with our emergency management group, what do we do? And I'll tell you that we were very successful, and our emergency management team worked very well. I don't wish that on anybody to go through that again, of bringing in water and distributing water to your residents and telling residents of Arlington and Watertown, you can't have our water because we're trying to supply it to our residents. I think this is something where we're going forward to prevent something, maybe not as catastrophic as that, but that's a situation which you don't want, and I know the Board of Selectmen don't want this to happen in our town, but unless you've lived through it, it is something that you don't want to wish on anybody.
Right, and the other thing that people lose track of is that the firefighting is probably more important than the drinking water to a certain extent if a fire starts. In fact, much of the expansion of the water systems across the United States was driven back in the early 1900s by the massive fires. You know, every major city had a major fire: Chicago, Boston, San Francisco, Salem, and that was the pressurized water. So the redundancy is critically important, and that's why we're this project is very important. And I know, and I apologize again for the disruption to the folks of Stoneham. It is a disruption to have that equipment in front of your house, to have the pipes there, to have the diesels fire up at 7 in the morning, but it is a critical infrastructure, and there's been a lot written lately about the decay of the infrastructure in the United States of America, and that across the country the various critical infrastructures have been allowed to fall in disrepair and have not been upgraded, not modernized. And while I know it's a pain in the neck, Stoneham's getting a huge upgrade to their infrastructure, not only with us, but the other things that are going on, and it's very inconvenient. You can't put a shine on a sneaker, but it is critically important for the long-term viability of the town and its residents.
Fred, as critical as it is critical, and I agree with the majority of what you said. It's also critical that an emergency vehicle can get down
That's true.
to a street, and I have a sick family member at my house, and I can tell you I've lived through it, and you want them to get there. And also, Fred, I'm going to throw this out there because I look at the water rates, and if there's anything you can do for the people of Stoneham, when it comes time to set the rate, I would ask you to be mindful of all the inconveniences, and I'd ask you to be mindful of the fact that the mitigation is nowhere near going to cover what some of the work that we have done. I would just ask you on behalf of all the residents, I know what my water bill is. My sons own a home in town. I know what their water bill is. I get a lot of calls on the water bill. If you could please take that into consideration and help us out, curb those rates, I think it would go a long way for a lot of the folks. They really have been inconvenienced in every way possible. So, I throw that out there on the table as well.
Well, I understand.
Help us.
But,
Help
no,
us.
but I would just I just say this though. But I think it's one of the things that we have worked real hard to work with Stoneham. I mean, you had a major problem with the gelatin plant leaving, and was going to be an incredible increase in your water rates. And we at the MDRA took the extraordinary step of allowing you to delay a payment on your pipeline assistance program. Some $380,000 was deferred, which allowed you to cushion that blow. And I know the selectmen were involved with that.
Not only allowed us to cushion that blow, Fred, we're the only community in the Commonwealth that has lowered the rates 2 years in a row. There's been a lot of accountability, and there's a lot of focus on that, and that's why I made that request, because I'd like to make it a trifecta. I'd like to have it three years in a row.
Going back to this, though, the real gist of this is these people were taking it on the chin. I mean, they had a very difficult summer. You couldn't watch a baseball game. It was noisy. I mean, they just had to endure a lot. And I think a lot of people thought it was coming off by the start of school, myself included. I was under the impression you couldn't be on. The reason we were starting in that area, we're up in North Street, when we really should have been in front of the Robert Hood School just getting that done. We're still there. The kids are going to school. Kids are walking to school. This is a situation we tried to avoid.
Right, our sequencing got, I don't want to make excuses.
Yeah.
It didn't, sometimes in these construction projects, when you're relying on other utilities and other things to be approved at a certain time, if something's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong. And as I said the other night, deadlines and trying to get the gas company out of the way, we paid a premium to get them to come in and accelerate their work. And things like, you take a boring here, you take a boring over there, no rock, and then you find the rocks like this. So it's just, but we're making progress. If there is a,
But I think you just have to understand that, that this is, I mean, you do it all the time. You're in and you're out, and this is what your world is. So, but it's not these people's world, And this equipment.
I got a christening, a baptism under fire, when I first took the job in 2001, where they ripped up Medford Square right within an earshot of my home. And you could hear the plates. They're working at night. You could hear the plates. You could hear the beep, beep, beep. And I was not very popular with my neighbors.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And so I understand. And we'll do our best. But if there is a silver lining, the tipping point is we're about the halfway mark. I think we came over
The halfway mark of the Oak Street.
Right, right, and
I
that's.
mean, this is going to go down Main Street. This is going to continue on.
This is
There's a
going to
lot of work.
continue on.
Yeah.
I don't think the streets are as busy where we're heading in the future, but again, I would just thank folks for their patience and thank you, the town officials, and
All right, so now, let me ask you a few more questions here before we open this up. So, another piece of information that was badly misspoken about, $429,000 specifically for Oak Street, does not have to do with the rest of the project. That money's specifically to pave Oak Street curb to curb, and according to our DPW director, there's sufficient money to do curb to curb and get some sidewalks left over and maybe a little bit more money. He has something, I can find it for you if you really want. His estimate, I want to be on the record to say that we have an estimate from the DPW director that is going to, actually, that's not even it, I don't think. That is it. That's Oak Street right there.
that's on your stationery.
Yep,
Put the top stationery on there, Tom.
right there. Okay, that comes from our Public Works. That was their estimate. They claimed that that's going to cover it. So when we have to pave that street, it looks like we're getting granite curbing, concrete sidewalks, police details, asphalt curb to curb. We have the estimate, we have the money, so when a year and a half comes by and this goes to get done, I'm assuming we're not going to have to hear that we don't have enough money to do this, because that'll look really bad. That also was negotiated through the former TA and yourself.
Yes.
So it wasn't the selectmen coming up with that mitigation package.
Just a question,
So-
Tom, is that money isolated or is that?
I don't think we made the payment yet. We get.
No.
No,
It says
when-
halfway through.
When it's done, is that becomes
That can't go to
fungible,
town
or is
meeting?
that?
Can that go to town meeting and get spent on something else, or is that, Karen? It can't. It has to go to, in fact, I think I read something in here that if you make a payment to the town, that money needs to be used for resurfacing roads that you actually did work on. We can't build a clubhouse someplace with that money. So that's something I think people are concerned about. That's good news. At 429 Oak Street. Now I come up Cottage Street. Who's paying, how's that getting paved?
It's paving Cottage Street.
So you're taking care of Cottage.
There's two phases. We're doing half of Cottage Street under this phase, and then the next contract is going to go the remainder of Cottage Street.
That street is the worst street in Stoneham. I mean, it's that way. It's unfortunate because of so many of these projects coming in. Streets that look like they were going to get hit with a utility project have been ignored for several years, and it's in tough shape now. They're going to do it two different. Cottage is just doing a street. Oak, we'll get the sidewalks out of it. We want to make sure that.
We're going to do curb to curb.
Curb to curb. So any place else, outside of Oak Street, any place else that you go, we're getting curb to curb.
Yes, unless, like I say, unless it's, one of the side streets where there's a
And
different.
then any side street that the equipment is sitting on that is gouged up, it's dug up.
The patching, they can do a nice job patching.
I've seen them use that heat, they melt it and
Yeah.
then resurface it, and that's it.
Infrared.
Yeah, infrared, that's it.
Now, it is important to realize that one of the reasons why they get frustrated with the utilities is they don't let it settle. So we're going to put a binder coat over it and let it settle for
10 years.
Yeah, so through the winter, you'll have the binder.
The problem,
That'll let it all
yeah,
settle down.
we're aware of that. The problem we have is the utilities leave, and then a year or two later, they don't come back, and usually there's nobody in town to chase them down or
You know what?
something.
You know where the.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, I just want to be on the record that this is happening. We understand that, but now, I got the sidewalks, the utility works that went on in the sidewalks, those were brand-new sidewalks, got ripped up on Williams. Who owns fixing those?
There's a couple panels we've been fixing.
Couple, it goes from.
I know, but
Blockbuster
in terms
down.
of the gas company went down.
The gas company went down.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that that's.
So how does that get fixed? I mean, it's part of it, they were hired by you to move utilities, correct?
Not on Williams.
Not on Williams, that's a separate project?
No, they decided when they were doing Oak Street to do some, they had cast iron mains on other streets like Williams, so they decided to enhance all of those pipelines. So I think it's conversation that the DPW has with any grid, and you probably get those
Miss-
sidewalks repaired.
Mr. Younger, to my point earlier, with trust and everything, appreciate it, but there needs to be representation there from the town to ensure that every street, every inch, to distinguish who's responsible for what. We need to have that in writing, not a verbal, and responsibility needs to be placed, and then action needs to follow, and execution.
We need that
and
in
then-
writing.
Yeah,
now,
we
but
need
We
that.
can't be
that-
2 years from now saying, well, who dug this up? Yeah, he's retired now, the guy that dealt with it.
Actually, what I was going to conclude here is, let Mr. Boosie continue, then I.
I'm fine. I'll have to go.
Okay, fine. Couple of things. One is, you don't have a town administrator here who just flew in here from New Hampshire or Vermont. I've worked with Mr. Lasky through the Wealth Administration. We go back a number of years, and we have a good trusting relationship between the two of us, and I think that's a benefit for the community. Regarding the roadway repair work when they're completed, I have some thoughts of how to have and I'll discuss it with Mr. Grover first, how to have an independent review of those done in cooperation with the MWRA. That would, I think, be something we could put in writing and discuss further. But I think we can do something that we can accomplish that and can be responsible for all the parties.
Okay. Probably any route that's going forward, we should probably see where we're at.
Right.
But see what it's going to look like when it's
Right.
done, right?
The thing, though, is if they're doing the work, at this point, we have to wait for them.
Yeah,
to
it's
complete.
hard to say what
Yeah.
Nottingham looked like beforehand.
And
but they may have
secondly, I will speak with the managers in Reading and Wakefield tomorrow to see if we can, in cooperation, intermunicipal cooperation, still utilize some of their space during the project.
What happened to the clover leaf? I thought we were trying to get some space up there. You on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the pipes on it, not trucks.
No, there's a couple of trucks there.
Couple of
too.
trucks?
Yeah.
No crane.
And I have another thought, which I don't want to speak publicly, that I'll speak to Mr. Lasky about.
Hurdle there, and I understand, Mr. Boosie's issue also with the bylaws. We had an issue last night arise on the board where we repurposed some town land, and I think ultimately it probably would have been shot down, but I agree with you with the method. It certainly wasn't handled appropriately. We had a mob scene on our hands that night, as we had at Robin Hood the other night as well.
Do you have any other questions?
I don't.
I'm good. I'm going to open it up to the public. Any questions?
Just one comment. The street opening permit. Something was mentioned the other night at the Robin Hood meeting that the Board of Selectmen or the town issued the street opening permit. Do you have that document? The street opening permit was not authorized by the Board of Selectmen. That street opening permit was signed by the Department of Public Works, I believe. Do you have that? I have it if you don't.
I didn't bring the permit with me, but it's issued by the Department of Public Works.
Right. Well, there was a statement made that the Board of Selectmen had to approve the street opening permit, and we did not approve the street opening permit.
It's my understanding that any new utility work has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. I don't know. I mean, I would say that this would fall under that. It was never brought to us, but
I don't know.
We'll get that for the screen. I'll get that for the screen before the meeting's over.
I have it here someplace.
Okay.
If you got a date, I can tell you what it is. Doesn't really matter at this point. There it is right there.
You got it?
Yeah.
The one is in modern technology.
Who's that? Can you just blow up that to see who signed that?
That's Albanese there, but you have to go to the end of it. It's Bob Grover's.
So high.
Yeah, I don't like to have to do this.
There it is.
It's at the end of this, right?
I think it's at the first page, Tom. Go up to the top. I think this is a signature.
Is it before
I
all this
can't
crap?
read whose signature it is. I'm not going
It's Bob Grover's, right? That's the permits. Yeah. Permit signed by Bob, the contract was signed by Tom.
First
the agreement,
page,
remember?
bottom of it.
All the way up again?
All the way to the top. Go right to the top. I believe it's the first page.
And then we can look for the signature and then zoom in.
Is that it right there?
That's Albanese. Yeah, see, then you have to go through all this stuff, right? Do all the permits.
I believe it's the first page, Tom. You passed it.
I don't think I did.
It's right there. There's handwriting there.
Let's do some note. There is a signature on here.
Go back to the first page, Tom, to the bottom
It's
of
on
it.
my wife. Hold on a second. It's not there.
Well,
Right there. Albanese signed
That's Albanese.
that.
Oh, I'm sorry, that is it,
Director
yeah.
of Public Works,
Director of
yeah.
Public Works.
Okay.
That is Bob Grover's. Yeah,
All right, and that's the
that
street
was it.
opening permit. Can you just show that, is that the top? The
that's a signature?
Department of Public Works. Construction of water.
The permit
Okay.
cost us $600.
Wow,
Okay,
that's
thanks.
cheap, really? We gotta look into that.
Raise the
$600.
water rates. Raise
What
the
kind of
rates.
Isn't it like 5% of the project? It should be like, it's a $20 million project.
Actually, all of our permit fees I want to take a look at.
Yeah, definitely take a look at that one. Oh, we're just
Open up a
giving it
can of
away here.
worms.
600.
They're gonna want to come back if you keep
Well,
these
we got
rates.
ours.
He's getting a raise.
Okay, I think Susan Keller had a question.
For your permit to put the roof on. I don't know. The company did it. I know what's in there.
Hi,
30
Susan Keeler, 22 Butler Ave. A long time ago, 2015, Caroline will probably remember, I came in with a map that I made up of all the projects that were going to happen in my neighborhood. And when you put them all together, it isolated some of us entirely, like we were an island. So I've been kind of following this for a long time, really closely. And I know that at the very beginning, the board back in 2011 and 12 and 13, it was kind of conceptual back then, this project, right? Is that a correct statement? It wasn't like a route was nailed down or discussed for real. It was all just ideas being discussed with the board, and they just didn't want it, period. And then after that, it started becoming more serious. So I looked up in the minutes to see what I could find, and it looks like in April of 2014, the route was still Main Street, because there's a comment in here about paving that was being done by MassDOT, and the comment was made, if they're going to pave down by Main and North, maybe they're not. Maybe the MWRA changed their mind on the pipeline coming down Main Street. So as of then, it was still Main Street.
There's no information at all about Main Street. Can I see the minutes?
It's in the minutes. Yep.
Let's see. Where does it say Main Street? What minutes from what meeting?
I can explain that if you like. Should I?
Yeah, at this point you should. What meeting is that? 14?
April of 14. It was just an offhand comment that was made.
Oh.
Because the route hadn't been nailed down as of then. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. That's the only point I was trying to make.
This is 2013, it looks like.
If you keep going, it's
Okay.
after that. But the point I wanted to make was in
Is
November
this
of
meeting here, November 18th?
November of 2014
That's this one.
is
here.
when it was really specific. And if you look at the minutes, there's a great big paragraph here.
I'm looking at it right now.
Okay,
Right
and you can see that
It says here,
The
Gillis
route-
Pump Station, Woodland Ave, South Street, Main Street, Marble Street, Wright Street, Cottage Street,
Yeah.
intersection of Elm, Oak, Williams. That's where it's going. That's
the route for this project is proposed to start, and then it gives the whole route with Oak Street and everything else.
Right.
Coordinate with the contractor to work during summer months. Coordinate
It is going down a
utilities.
section of Main Street on the southern side of the town.
Selectwoman O'Neill asks if this is the final route. MWRA feels this is a good route. You know,
This is the route that they took. This
right,
is the route that's being built.
exactly. But my only point is, it's been under discussion for a long time. It wasn't like a route was nailed down in 2011 by somebody, and certainly not the MWRA.
No, that's what we went over at the beginning of the night. For up until 2014, it
Right.
was on the east side, and they hit ledge. And they
There
had to
were
go up
all
with it.
different discussions, and it was really confusing because they had all different projects going on around here. So it wasn't until 2014, towards the end, when this route was decided upon. And my impression from, I wasn't at the meeting that was held August 29th, but from watching it, I think what my neighbors on Oak Street are upset about is they weren't notified specifically. You know, I'm assuming that nobody came to their house and put a notice on their house and said, you know what, your life's going to be miserable for a few months or a year. I think it's because it wasn't very public, and that's their complaint. You know, things are going to happen. Sewer lines are going to be dug up on streets, and everybody can expect their street's going to be dug up at some point in time. Mine has been. But I think if you don't know what's going to happen, and it's all of a sudden a surprise, and it's really life-altering, like for some of those people, I think that's what it is. And I think that's what maybe they were blaming the board for.
Right,
Thank
but,
you.
I mean, to be clear, it does not, what this is telling you, this document here, the route that they came forward with is the route that they're working on. It doesn't say that they were going down Main Street and they changed direction on us.
No, it's not in writing anywhere, because the town administrator, I have all sorts of minutes in his reports. He would come back and he would report to you, you know, what the discussions were. It wasn't like everyone sat around at a Board of Selectmen's meeting and said, with a map, let's pick where they're going to go. I don't know how it happened, but I can just say that it was Main Street at some point in 2014.
It was never
and
Main
then
Street.
it
It wasn't
was
Main Street in 2014.
Yeah, it was.
No, it wasn't. This here, this is the route it's going on. This pipeline will be on Main Street in the southern section of town. They are going to be on Main Street there.
They're going to be on Main Street.
But can somebody explain this better than I can?
Yeah, on the next section of the pipeline, it's going to come out of Spot Pond, and
No, this is North Street,
No, it doesn't say
North
anything.
and Main. Yes, it does,
Let me
on
see.
the April one.
I just want to say, Susan, I do remember you not only coming in with the map, you color-coded it.
Yep.
I remember you came to my office hours that day.
Yep.
And I
It's kinda
remember
like
that
this map.
that your emphasis was you really had a concern, and I encouraged you to come
Right.
to the Board of Selectmen meeting. Your concern was the multiple projects taking place and how it was going to be burdensome on the towns, emergency vehicles. I think you had a sick family
Especially
member.
emergency
Okay, so
vehicles.
I
Yep.
Okay,
fully
so-
recall that.
If we
That's
go up
exactly
here,
what
it says,
happened.
Selectman DePinto asked about how long the pipeline will last. MWA states the pipe.
What meeting is this?
This is November 18th, 2014. Okay. Typically lasts 50 to 100 years. Selectman DePinto asked about the project coming at North and Main. He's discussing the intersection that's on the TIF. to
Right.
Redo.
That's not
a-
what I meant.
Okay, so that's the North and Main part.
No,
MWRA, what's that?
no.
MWRA said they will coordinate with MassDOT. The route for the first project was proposed to start at Gillis Pump Station, Woodland Road, South Street, Main Street, Marble Street, Wright Street, Cottage Street, the intersection of Elm and Williams Oak Street, Forest Street, North Street, across Main, and out to Prospect Street and Wakefield.
That's when the route was established as to what it is now.
Yes,
I'm talking about April 8th, 2014.
April 8th.
Dave Rigucci says it was mentioned last night at the Finance Board that Route 28 is being repaved by the state from Elm to North. Remember when they repaved that section of Main Street?
Yeah.
Probably in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if that's an indication that the MWRA has given up on Stoneham, but that's one of our thoughts, taking the 4-foot diameter pipe and running it up Main Street. The state's paving a portion of that, so I don't know if that's what that means, if anything, to the MWRA pipeline. So at that point in time, it was Main Street.
No, we went
That was
through this-
the route.
If you were paying attention at the beginning of the night, from 2010, that was the route. The route was the easterly route.
It was all over the place up until
I mean, the one that they brought to the board.
November 18,
The
2014.
official route that they brought to the board was the easterly route. It's in all the minutes, it's in all the,
Right.
I mean, there is nothing here, except for Dave making an offhanded remark, I guess, on something that's not even an MWRA subject, it's paving the street. There's nothing on the MWRA that mentions Main Street. There's plenty of documentation on...
No, but the discussions were obviously had, and it was apparently known to the board and to Dave Ragucci and to the MWRA. I'm just saying that's what the route was. I'm not saying, that
There
I
was
have
never a route.
documents
There was no documentation
mapping it out.
anywhere that there's a route to go down Main Street.
Did I? I don't know. Maybe you
I will show it
interpret
to you.
it
All right,
differently.
you know what? If you want to, we can go through every email here. I got it all night.
No,
Around the
no.
corner. I mean, let's go. If you want to play this game,
No.
we can do it. So
It's not a game. I have
it's not a
minutes.
game, so
You have emails. I have minutes.
I have minutes too. And there was very few minutes that the MWA was here.
No, there were a lot of them.
Excuse me, Tom.
Yes.
Is it okay to play a clip?
I'll play it for you, but go ahead, sure.
November, I just have a small clip.
Yeah, let's put it on YouTube.
It's
And Fred looks at Dave and says, you mean Main Street's off the table, he's giving me the
when
evil
he was
eye.
driving up, yeah.
Yeah,
So
what's that mean?
that means it was still in, Main Street was
That
still
means
being
that him and
talked about in
Dave may have
2014.
talked about it, but we have no knowledge of it. It was never brought to the
Right.
board.
Because
They were here, they were telling us they were working on this particular route.
Right.
And we were waiting for them to give us a final so we could discuss it. They'd never given us a final.
I'm just saying, Tom, the perception.
It was
Tom.
an off-the-cuff. Fred, would you
it's-
care to explain this? I guess we have to do this all night because I'll go back through.
Here tonight, I came right up Main Street, popped in over here. I said, geez, I'm going to talk to Mr. Ragucci again about coming right up Main Street, but I might as well don't he's giving the evil eye. Anyway, no,
So he was getting the evil eye, obviously, because it was talked about. But 2014, how long does it take to make up a set of plans to do this type of job? 18 months, 2 years. Okay, so if it did start in 2010, 2011, that's a long time, and these got kicked around up until 2014, so you guys can put together your plans to send it out to bid, correct? And so when these guys bid on it, I mean, you have to do not only the borings, but if Main Street was already dug up years ago, knowing that there was no ledge, you guys are the engineers, and obviously we have a town engineer, town administrator. Wouldn't that be a no-brainer? I'm saying it's going to be disruptive either way. But in your guys' professional opinion, is it easier going on a straight line or making all those turns? Straight line? All right. Thanks.
Okay, so going back to, we have to do this again. This is an email from 2011, correct? And it's Tom Lindbergh. Is Tom here?
no, Tom's retired.
See, that's
How long the
temporary.
project's taken.
This is, it's from 2010. This is the route. This is the official route. The MWRA has come down and offered to the board. I wasn't on the board then. This is the official route. There is no documentation.
Which one in 2010?
This is it right here. This is an email from Tom. It's dated 2011, 11/22/2011. Okay? It's a request for information. This is the easterly route. Okay?
Right.
That's the one we've been working on when you went to the Board of Selectmen. Originally, this is the route that was always discussed. The Board of
Right.
Selectmen got this information. There is no drawing, there's no discussion, there is nothing about Main Street within the Board of Selectmen. I don't know why we keep going back to that.
And then, when this didn't work in 2014, we came back and finalized the route and I came and presented it to the board. This is what we're looking at. I did have the little what I said today, Mr. Iguchi, and I had a conversation with him offline to make sure that Main Street was still not acceptable to the town. So when that occurred, and we then went forward
Right.
with the current route. So that was
this route
November
right here that we
14.
just discussed.
The fall of 16, we put out the bid, correct? January was awarded, and they started construction. We awarded the contract in January. We got the town's approval in May, I believe, and we hit the ground running, trying to make up, some time. So that's kind of the sequence.
All right. I mean, we keep going back to this Main Street issue, but I don't know why it was never publicly presented to us.
I think it's not disputable that clearly Mr. Lasky has come here tonight. He's been honest and forthright. I appreciate that. He said that he spoke to the prior town administrator, which was my understanding when I got on the board, and their communication went the way that Mr. Lasky and what the records reflect. So I think it's a beating a dead horse, Tom. It's not disputable that.
I mean, here we are on May 13th of 2016. The chairman of the board is asking Dave, do we have a final route? Do we have one? I'm frustrated with it. I mean, you can read her email right there. I'll read it for you. Kindly gather and review all meeting minutes, notes that transpired between you and the MWRA, meeting dates, identification and negotiations team, if one exists. Please include any predetermined or negotiated mitigation arrangements, as well as a basis for rationale for such agreement. Was a comparison model used as part of the decision making progress? If so, kindly include identification of towns and what models were used. Were there any other communities who were also part of this project consulted? Do we know what their mitigation agreements are? Was fair weight and consideration made to Stoneham concerning the local impact to merchants, residents, and general disruption? Was the chamber included in any meetings? If so, were they given opportunity to provide feedback? Was school involved in any of these discussions? If so, were their concerns solicited or provided from a legal perspective? Who reviewed the agreement? The document I saw did not appear to provide any protection for the community. Are there any public meetings planned to inform the public? Is there a timeline? Has a route been confirmed? We'd welcome any input or cooperation from the NWRA. This is on May 31st of 2016, and that's the chairman of the board talking to the TA saying, we need information.
It just further substantiates the concerns that the board had.
I mean, another email in here just basically saying, hey, nobody knows what's going on. And she's saying here, as the chairman, obviously I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I sense other members may feel it as uninformed as I. Perhaps not, but that's the reason for the agenda item on Tuesday, or at least I thought so, and that was one of the agendas. There were 2 meetings in a row, so we can pick it old scabs if you want.
And also, just for the record, we tried to get this on a regular agenda item with the Board of Selectmen. That request was made and it was denied, and as a result, we're here this evening. This is probably a better setting anyway, because it's exclusive to you and your crew, and I think we're getting to the truth, and we're getting some answers, and it's good that the residents know it, and I appreciate it.
Were there any other comments from residents?
I'll just say this because it's personal. I didn't know about the first meeting. In the second meeting, I said I couldn't come, and I was informed by Dave Rigucci that he had informed the chairperson that I couldn't come. Could we reschedule? It went ahead. Anyway.
Cindy, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Boozy. Cindy Hemingway, 14 Fells Road. I'm getting texts from residents who are watching at home. Apparently, the Stoneham TV is cutting in and out. So they've texted me and asked me if it could be clarified. The question I think we all came to hear tonight, who made the decision? It sounds like Mr. Lasky is saying that the former TA said absolutely no to Main Street. So,
Prior to 2010, by the way.
Okay. So,
yes.
Do we have a clear cut?
There is no communication from 2010. He's talking about the MWRA paving a state road.
No,
In 2010,
not that time.
we can go through every email again. I can go through at the timeline. I had 7 years worth of emails here. You will not find one
More,
that says,
more importantly, you have Mr. Lasky's clear communication that he was dealing with the prior town administrator tonight. I don't know what other, evidence you need or what other proof you need. That's the way it was explained to me from the prior TA that he was working with Mr. Lasky. Mr. Lasky reiterated that tonight. I don't know, you heard from the horse's mouth. I don't know what else we can possibly say.
yes before.
Anyway, for the clarification for people at home who I think were, from the text I'm getting saying the TV is cutting in and out, they're asking, could I please ask clarification, who made the final decision on the final route that was chosen? That's my first question, if I may. A second question.
The answer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard earlier tonight was that they had tried to go up east side, they hit a lot of ledge. Once they hit the ledge, their engineers got together and tried to find a secondary route, and they did test borings. They have an engineering department that takes 2 years to come up with complete drawings. They designed a route that went from Maine to Gardstown. We've been through the route that's here, up Oak Street, so it came from the MWRA. Am I wrong in saying that?
I think that's accurate.
That's accurate, okay?
Okay, and if I may, a second question. I don't live in that end of town, thankfully. I appreciate what the people who live in the end of town, what they've gone through, Susan, and people who live in that end of town. It's awful. I've driven through there on a weekend, but you can kind of get through there. I've walked through there. It's unbelievable. At any rate, at what point will this project be done, and then Eversource starts their project? Anybody have an answer to that?
I'm hearing that Eversource is next summer, correct? And for those who want to know, excuse me, in case, because this one here is one of those, nobody told me. I'm telling you. That's coming up Montvale Ave. It's taking a left onto Main Street, and it's going up Elm Street. And it is going to be a disaster. And that'll be going on with the MWR. We have been saying this for years. That was Caroline's point earlier tonight. We need coordination through all these projects. There's too many projects going on in Stoneham that the right hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing anymore. And this all has to be coordinated. We can't, I don't know how we're going to deal with the burden of that next summer. I really don't.
I can give you some highlight of that right now. Thank you very much. Eversource, the decision is still with the State's Energy Siting Board for the approval of that project. It may get approved between September and November of this year. It's been with them for a while. We are still working on agreements with Eversource. We're actually meeting with them literally almost every 3 weeks right now, and it's a concerted effort with myself, outside counsel, our public safety officials, our public work officials, and I can tell you we are working very hard and diligently to try to coordinate that with our regular projects and get the most back that we can for the town. But we will not know about the final approval of that site till probably late fall. And once we get the approval, the first people we'll know will be the 5 board members. But that's where it's...
And then after that, the townspeople, the residents who are going to be affected, because I think if we learn anything from this situation is that more communication from maybe DPW or the town to let the residents know, okay, this is going to be starting. So it didn't come as a surprise, as Susan said.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Where are our minutes? I usually look through here.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Susan.
Just want to clarify 2 of the things I said because it sounds like they weren't understood.
Go ahead, please.
I didn't say the MWRA was paving Main Street. I said that MassDOT was paving from Elm to North, and that resulted in the comment from Dave Ragucci. I guess the MWRA has given up on Stoneham with their pipeline then. So that was what I said. And the other one was from the November meeting. That was the proposed route as of that time. That wasn't
be clear, the
definite
proposed
route. And I know you didn't vote on it and say we want this route. But what I'm saying is, you could have said we don't. You could have said, oh my God, there's a school on that street, don't go there. Nobody said anything. Nobody had a problem with it.
The problem was
it was
they
brought up
hadn't had-
over and over. It wasn't a surprise.
Okay, so.
Okay? That's
much
what I
like
wanted to make sure you
Eversource,
knew.
we start off with, no, you can't come. And typically, utility companies don't just walk away. So, well, the selectmen said no, so we're going to go find another town. And we did, that route did happen. There was a letter from the Board of Selectmen in 2011 saying, you can't come here. Apparently, that didn't deter them from coming here. They're coming here. They selected a route that was on the easterly side, and they couldn't go there. They were working on a route on the westerly side. When they showed up at that meeting, it wasn't final. I mean, the final documents didn't come out in 2016. But we couldn't, we were waiting for them to tell us what the final route is. And like I said, we didn't get that information until 2016. If you go to the drawings are dated 2016. That's your final route. We didn't know for sure they were going down Oak Street. And quite frankly, I mean, I find it surprising. Apparently, I'm not allowed to say you can't go down Main Street, even though I didn't. I'm not allowed to that. But I'm supposed to say you can't go down Oak Street. I mean, you can't keep moving the goal lines like this. I mean, what are we allowed to say and not say is I'm really not sure. So, anywho, anyone else got a comment? Nothing from over there? Mr. Means?
Yeah. Mr. Lasky.
Can you take the microphone? Microphone's name and address?
Can you throw us a bone?
Microphone, Larry, please.
Come on.
Microphone,
Take the
name and
microphone.
address. We all have to do it, Larry. All the rules.
I like that one. Larry Means, 4 Victoria Lane, which is right next to Oak Street. I think what the problem was that not only didn't the people in that neighborhood know that it was coming, most people didn't even know it was coming. It's like that survey they took at Berkeley out in California. Who's the president of the United States? 9 out of 10 didn't know it, believe it or not. But on Oak Street, what I think they're shocked with is not that you're coming down Oak Street, it's the amount of equipment. Now, that's not your fault, it's not the contractor's fault, but that's the big problem. All that equipment. And Stoneham's a very small community, and there's no place to really put, there's no chunk of land. It's not like Tewksbury, which is 16 square miles, and we're 4. But you could throw us a little chunk of money. A couple $100,000? You're laughing. No, really. I mean, you took a major piece of property up at the hospital. That was another thing we didn't know about. 5 acres of land that we can't tax now.
I got to be serious. That's off topic.
But I know, but I'm just asking, the MWRA could...
You just had to pay attention.
I can't talk this thing.
So,
Let her talk.
all right, so I think what come out of this meeting, I think Mr. Younger is going to he's going to get back to us with what he can do with some of his equipment. I think Mr. Lasky understands the exasperation here, and he's going to try to work with Mr. Younger to try to lighten the load on those streets a little bit, get some help where we can. Make sure, I think state agencies need to know, this is a big state project. We're getting another one next year. We need help. You can't just come here and bully through the neighborhoods, and that's not going to be acceptable.
Continuing.
And that, we want to be clear that side roads are getting banged up due to the construction, due to the equipment that are on there. I'll be honest with you, I don't think our bylaws allow this to happen. I don't think this stuff can be left there, but and I can look into that. But anything on a side street, if we have side streets that are getting destroyed, if we have sidewalks getting destroyed, we need to come up with, we want it in writing, as streets are getting beat up, that they are going to be fixed. And we're going to have to get a timeline together that allows that to happen. I mean, I do this every year at the selectmen's meetings. I would walk around town and take pictures of where the utilities think of a concrete sidewalk and replace it with asphalt, and it's now going on its 4th year, and it hasn't been fixed. So we want to verify that stuff's all been corrected. And I think what I'm hearing, too, is that it's been a problem in town. If you're within the circle of town hall, you understand what the communication is. Once you get outside of that, there's not a good mechanism to communicate with people. So we have to find a way to communicate with Oak Street area right now, Cottage Street next, give them a heads up as to where this thing's going, what to expect, what kind of inconvenience you're going to get, and you know, when you're done, yes, you will have new roads, and you'll have this, and you know, we have to make it so that it was better for their endurance of going through, that they're assured that they're going to get a better piece of property out of the deal. Anything else?
I just want to kind of just review what we agreed to today and tell you that really, I want to look at all of you. Public safety is the number one concern for people in this town. Safe neighborhoods, being able to walk, take your children to school, please, number one. Number two, the incremental plan to move the equipment, slowly get that equipment off our streets and onto other sites, to ensure that emergency vehicles have safe routes and they can get to residents' homes. That's important. Mr. Lasky, to review when it's time to review the water rates, think of us here and be kind to us. Also, that there's commingled efforts to have exit reviews of our streets when these projects are over, that you aren't the determining factor, but that the town plays a role in that, and to weigh all the local impacts taking place in our neighborhoods, disrupting everyone's summer. It was a summer that never was for those people down there. So to keep those things, but public safety and safe routes and walking is really, really, at the forefront of this. So those are the takeaways that I have. I'm going to ask David to review this, create the minutes, and ensure that each of these items is included in it. And I want to thank all of you for coming, and I want to thank you for your integrity today, and I want to thank all of you for your cooperation, future continued cooperation with this while we try to get through this.
All right, well, thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Motion adjourned.
All in favor? Aye.